I'm at the Juvenile Justice Center in San Francisco, where the defendant in the Ricky Pearsall incident, who's charged with attempted murder and armed robbery, faced his second hearing. It was a very quick hearing, as the defendant waived his right to a speedy trial. The next pretrial conference is going to be here on September 26th. We did hear from Bob Dunlap, who's the public defender in this case, and Dunlap did share some more details, at least the way that he sees the details, based on security camera footage in the Ricky Pearsall incident.
But here are the stalwarts. I just want to give you a little bit of an update if I could, and then I'll throw it open for questions. My client is recovering nicely from his wounds, both the gunshot wound and the abrasions and bruises that he suffered in the struggle with Mr. Pearsall, which were pretty significant. In that regard, our investigator has located video that wasn't previously found that shows the interaction from a different perspective, from a better angle. We see a lot more of it. I provided that to the prosecution on Friday. They're still, reviewing it and considering it. So today we waived time for trial, which means to say we still have the right to a trial, but we're not demanding that it happen in a speedy fashion because I want to give them time to, consider everything and make a reasoned decision, because I think the reasoned decision in this case will be favorable to my client. I just want to say to all the media, there's been a huge outpouring of requests, both by email and by phone. I apologize that I can't respond to all of you individually. I would spend my whole day doing it. And I'm sure from your perspective, this is the only case I have, but there's other chicks in the barnyard that need my attention now and then. So I just think it's also maybe a little more democratic or a little fairer to, kind of do it all at once so you all get the same information. So I do want to thank you for your interest, and I'm happy to ask any questions. But let me ask, is Hannah Wiley here? Are you Ms. Wiley? I want to give you first shot because I really appreciated your very thoughtful email. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you actually expand a little bit more on the video when you said that shows things in a bit of a different perspective? What do you mean by that?
Well, literally, because most of the video we've had was from across the street, so a lot of the interaction between the boy and Mr. Pearsall was blocked by parked cars. They kind of pop out and then go back behind the parked cars. So we miss a lot. So my investigator was able to find it from the other perspective, looking out toward the street from the building line, and that shows you a lot more about what did occur.
What occurred? More about that?
Well, it was a rather extended struggle, I'll say, between Mr. Pearsall and my client, as they were really sort of fighting back and forth on the sidewalk. As you might imagine, Mr. Pearsall gets the best of it, and eventually he does kind of I don't know if he ever wrestled or not, but he does kind of a nice sort of almost like a hip toss and throws my client to the ground and ends up on top of him. Unfortunately, at that point, they've kind of thrown themselves off screen, so even this new perspective doesn't show everything I'm hoping to see, but we're still looking. I think there's more out there.
Do you feel that helps your case in some way?
Did you have another?
Okay. Do you feel that helps your case in some way?
I do.
In what way?
Well, I think it supports what's always been my belief and theory on this case, that this is an attempted robbery, not an attempted murder. And I think the video supports that.
Were the shots fired during the period of time that you saw on stage?
You still can't tell that, and I'm hoping that more video will shed light on that. It's what you look for is muzzle flash, and we just really haven't seen. I haven't seen pinpointing when the shots were fired.
Do you know, in asking for, in waiving his right for a speedy trial, this obviously gives a little bit more time to review. He's going to remain in custody. Tell me a little bit about that, and does that serve the public, and does that serve your plan?
Well, we're always concerned about juveniles being in custody, but let's face it, this is a very serious case. So if we have to invest a little bit of time in this to get the right outcome, then we're going to do that.
Has there been any more thought about, have you heard from the DA's office whether this case could be prosecuted as an adult?
Well, of course it can be. They can petition the court to try to do that, and then the court would decide what the outcome was. That's why I'm giving them the time now rather than forcing it, to give them the time to make a considered decision about that, view all the evidence, even the stuff that I'm giving them, especially the stuff I'm giving them, so that they can make the right decision.
I want to ask you about the police report that came out of Tracy about your client brought a gun into the school just a week before. Last week you told us, this is really his first encounter with the law. He's an outstanding citizen. Does that statement kind of hold up with, his actions from just a couple of days previous to this incident?
It does, because it's false. The report in the Daily Mail is false. My client did not have a gun at school. Did not have a gun at school. It's a false report. And from what little I know about the Daily Mail, this wouldn't be the first time that they've come out with a scandal sheet type of thing like that. But it's false. It's false news. It's a false narrative. He did not have a gun at school.
So never brandished a weapon at school.
If he had that gun at school, 3 things would have happened. He would have been arrested, they would have filed a petition against him, and he would have been, ejected from the school. None of those things happened. None of those things happened. In fact, I'll tell you this, my client, we've talked previously about him being a high school senior. I mean, he's on track to graduate early. How many of us can say we did that?
It does raise the question. If he's such a great student as you described, why did he come to San Francisco with a gun and attack someone?
Well, it remains to be seen if he came to San Francisco with the gun. The genesis of the gun is still under investigation.
Why did he attack someone with a gun?
Well, as I say, I don't think there's a big question here that it's an attempted robbery.
Can you shed any more light on the prior matter in San Joaquin County that was divulged last year?
I can't. I know a little bit more about that, but I don't know enough really to discuss it intelligently. But I can tell you, it wasn't what the Daily Mail is reporting.
In adult court, after a preliminary hearing, a lot of times the evidence is released so that the public can review it. In this case, given that you have a new angle of video and there's other video involved, is that something that could potentially be released as well after a preliminary hearing, or something similar that happens in juvenile court?
Well, we don't have preliminary hearings here. And still, it's all still confidential. It's all still under juvenile confidentiality, even though the nature of this offense opens it up to the public, such as yourselves, for court proceedings. We're still bound by juvenile confidentiality. Something that whoever gave the police report to the Daily Mail didn't apparently feel constrained by, but that's a crime of its own that I'm not here to discuss.
So just for clarification's sake, the police report is inaccurate?
Well, it's so heavily redacted, it's hard to even say what it is. But I'm going more by the headline, frankly, which was juvenile involved in Pearsall shooting had gun at school the week before. I'm telling you, that's false. It's a false narrative.
26th, what should we expect for that one?
Well, hopefully by then the prosecution will have made a decision with regard to whether or not to pursue this as an adult or as a juvenile. And of course, we're hoping that that they'll see my client for the teenager that he is and allow this to proceed in such a fashion. If they need more time, we'll give them more time.
If the case is moved to adult court, you remain as a judge.
Yeah, I would.
Can you tell us anything more about him? His family?
School? Yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about him. School, I think I covered. He's close to graduation. The family is, as you might imagine, very, very upset about all of this. Their hearts and thoughts continue to go out to the Pearsall family. Of course, everyone's relieved with how well he's doing. My client, is taking this very hard, not just because he's in trouble, but because he really, shows genuine remorse for being involved in this incident in the first place. I know certain things get distorted through the lens of media, which is part of the reason we have the rules in place that we do. For example, it was reported that, during the first hearing, he sat stoically, facing forward, didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge his parents, as if that was like some sort of like cold-heartedness or cold-bloodedness on his part. It was just following the judge's order. Before you came into court, the judge told him, sit straight, just look at me, don't turn back, don't acknowledge the audience. So you can see how, something like that gets, misperceived.
What does your client think about the national attention that's come about from this? And does your client consider himself a football or a 49ers fan?
He's not a huge football fan in general, but he is, of course, mortified about what happened. Not just because it was Mr. Pearsall, but but people are people. And two people got shot here. One was him, and one was Mr. Pearsall. So he's mortified about that. But I'm a 49er fan. I was at the game last night. I was happy to see Mr. Pearsall looking well and doing well, and the officer that helped him, Sergeant Harrell, being celebrated as she should be. But I also want to give a shout out to the officers that helped my client who was shot, who came over to them for assistance and got it. Officer Slamovitz was applying pressure. Officer Kidd was applied a tourniquet. Officer Davidson rendered other medical assistance. And because of their quick actions in combination with the actions that were taken from Mr. Pearsall, they're both enjoying relative speedy recoveries from what otherwise could have been a drastic outcome. Which is why I take a little umbrage, not to digress, but this notion that if only there had been more police at Union Square, this never would have happened. That's magical thinking. And I think it really does a disservice to the officers that were there, who responded so quickly and so well, and contributed to these good outcomes.
Are you saying that he turned himself in?
He crossed the street when he saw the police cruiser there. He held up his arm to show them that he was shot because he was fearful that he would bleed out. And he might have had they not applied pressure and applied a tourniquet.
Was he shot in the forearm?
Yes, left forearm, yeah, through and through. He's got one prior pending matter in San Joaquin County, not the thing you're reading about in the Daily Mail. But I can't comment on anything.
So the thing that's the police report that's attached to the Daily Mail that you keep saying is not accurate. So there's the probation thing that we heard in courts. This additional thing that there is a police report that exists, but not according to the headline. And then this. So there's 3 things we're talking about here, right?
Well, 2 and a 0. If you want to see that adds up to 3, but my math would be different.
Okay.
All right. Thanks very much.